that regardless of whether we call it a program, initiative, or an effort.
But we have to know the nature of it, and this is what's so difficult when you're dealing with an effort that the CIA has been or still is a part of undertaking. Apparently it's over. But if they never actually carried it out, what is there to tell Congress
I think the issue is, this is part of the mythology of Dick Cheney to some extent.
Right.
I wish Liz was here today rather than tomorrow, is did he make an affirmative decision? Congress shouldn't know about this. Don't tell them. Whatever the nature of the activity was. If that's the case, people are going to be interested in his role there.
The source I've spoken to, and Pat, I'll hand it to you, but the source I've spoken to has said that the program was never developed enough to either talk to Congress about or to talk to anybody high level in the administration about, and therefore there was nothing to talk about.
Well, but if he knew about it.
That's my guess as to what happened as well. But let me say this. The politics of this, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, says we got to look to the future. McCain says we got to look to the future. If we go back into this, and if you go back to where Mr. Holder, the Attorney General, is saying, now we may have a special prosecutor for the CIA and the waterboarding and all the rest of it, I think Dick Cheney is like Brer Rabbit. You are throwing him into the briar patch, and you have the Democrats again going after the Republicans on national security, that the Republicans were overly aggressive and overly tough and overly ruthless. That is a playing field, I think, that could tear the Democratic Party apart, and it's to the advantage, quite frankly, of Dick Cheney, who I believe in that last face-off has done very well, and he's the one that's been rising in the polls as a consequence of all this.
It's so interesting that you say that about the concern for the Democratic Party, because Mark Halperin, the other story that broke over the weekend involves Eric Holder and a potential torture investigator or prosecutor?
Well, limited. He's not talking about doing a full investigation of everything, but there are some limited cases where he's decided he may feel he needs to go forward and investigate and maybe prosecute. Not the White House's focus, as Pat suggested, the president's talked about going forward, but the Attorney General is, in the abstract at least, it'd be nice if he was following the evidence wherever it led rather than doing the White House's political bidding. I don't think this is as big a deal, though, because whether there are a few prosecutions or none at all, as long as there's not a broad-based investigation, I think people will be fine with it.
All right, Pat.
Let me dissent on that just very briefly to this extent. Look, we know pretty much what happened. The CIA did use these techniques, waterboarding, et cetera, on at least 3 individuals. They did get legal judgments from White House and Justice Department folks that they could do it, and they were ordered to do that by President of the United States and the Vice President. If you have an investigation, you go right up the food chain, right into the White House and the Oval Office and the Vice President's office from the outset, I think, because the CIA guys are going to say, look, we were authorized to do this. Here's the paper we used. And the guys that wrote the paper said we were asked to write it by Cheney, and that's what we wrote.
John Hellman, do we need this?
I don't know if we need it, but I'll tell you who really doesn't need it is Barack Obama. And I would actually say I'd go a little further than where Mark is. I'm pretty sure that not only does the White House it's not their focus, you can actually start to see a little bit of tension starting to emerge, as often does, between the White House and the Attorney General on this question. And I agree with Mark that the quasi-independence of the Justice Department is very important.
Yeah.
But as a political matter, I think Pat's right. And I think if you ask Barack Obama, if it was not an independent agency, the Justice Department, he would not have Eric Holder do this. And I think they must look at this with a little bit of annoyance and a little bit of concern, because this raises a bunch of issues that do them no particular good politically.
It doesn't move them forward. And here we're talking about a potential second stimulus package. We're wondering exactly where the first one is going, has gone, will go. And the unemployment rate is something we need to talk about as well, because if it's not going to move it, we're still going to have the same problem we have right now a couple of years from now. And we will be talking about a second stimulus package unless someone comes up with a better idea. So that's one of the issues that I think the president would like to see moving forward on and seeing some success on. And I don't know, I've got some interesting op-eds on that coming up.
All he cares about is health care, and we haven't mentioned it yet.
And health care, exactly, which he has.